Today is a really significant day. News broke that Pope Francis has passed away. He was 88.
Yeah, and it comes just, what, a day after his Easter appearance. It feels quite sudden, even with his recent health issues.
He really does. So in this deep dive, we want to explore, the immediate fallout, the global reaction. What happens next in the Vatican?
Exactly. And we've pulled together reporting from quite a few places: Al Jazeera, Times of India, GB News, Sky, CBS, The Independent, trying to get a broad picture.
Right, a global perspective for a global event.
Yeah.
So what do these initial moments tell us about Francis's impact and, the church's procedures?
That's the goal. Like, what was the instant response? What are the immediate steps? Are there any surprising details emerging already?
Let's get into it. So the first official word.
It came this morning, Rome time. Cardinal Kevin Farrell, he's the Camerlengo, announced the Pope died at 7:35 a.m.
Okay, the Camerlengo. We'll come back to his role. And the cause of death.
The Times of India reported, citing ANS, the Italian agency, that the Vatican confirmed it was a cerebral stroke, led to irreversible heart failure.
A stark confirmation.
It is, and almost immediately things started happening publicly. A rosary prayer was held in St. Peter's Square. That was really the first public commemoration.
It shows how ingrained these traditions are, how quickly they activate.
Absolutely. And the global reaction started flooding in almost instantly.
Yeah.
It really shows the reach of the papacy, doesn't it?
It really does. Let's talk about some of those. Italy obviously must have reacted strongly.
Oh, definitely. Prime Minister Maloney called him a great man, a great shepherd. Deep sorrow. They even postponed today's football matches as a sign of respect.
Wow, okay. And Argentina, his home country.
Deep regret expressed by the government there. And interestingly, President Milei, who hasn't always seen eye to eye with the Pope, specifically praised his work on interreligious dialogue, engaging young people, and also his efforts on Vatican finances.
Interesting acknowledgement there. What about the EU?
Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission president, she highlighted his efforts for peace and fairness, his humility, his care for the less fortunate. These seem to be common threads, actually.
Yeah, humility and service, definitely hearing that a lot. The U.S.
Condolences from various figures. The White House issued a statement. Former President Trump called him a good man who loved the world and ordered flags to half-staff.
And Vice President Vance, he met him just yesterday, didn't he?
He did. Expressed sympathy for Catholics worldwide, acknowledging that deep respect many held for him.
Okay. Let's look further afield. Russia.
President Putin acknowledged his passing, praised Francis's work on strengthening ties between the Russian Orthodox and Catholic churches. The Moscow Patriarchate echoed that.
So his diplomatic and interchurch efforts being recognized there.
Definitely. And in India, Prime Minister Modi called him a beacon of compassion, humility, and spiritual courage, focusing on his service to the poor.
And India declared state mourning.
Yes, 3 days. A very significant gesture. National flag at half-mast as well.
What about other major European countries? France.
President Macron praised his solidarity with the vulnerable, especially in conflict zones.
And Brazil, Lula.
Yeah, President Lula lauded his work on big global issues, climate change, social justice, shows his influence went well beyond just religious circles.
Absolutely. It wasn't just political leaders either, right?
Not at all. Palestinian Authority President Abbas called him a loyal friend, highlighting his support for Palestinian rights and recognition of the state. That's quite a statement.
It is. Shows the papacy's role in, very complex international situations.
And Muhammad Yunus in Bangladesh, the Nobel laureate, called him a true friend and kindred spirit, a voice of moral clarity.
Philippines, huge Catholic population there.
President Marcos Jr. said he was the best pope in my lifetime. Cardinal David expressed shock and called for prayers.
We also saw tributes from other major religious figures.
Yes, the Dalai Lama offered prayers, praised his dedicated service and simple life, said the best tribute is to be warm-hearted, essentially.
It's quite moving. And the UN?
Secretary General Guterres spoke of his historic influence, a voice for peace and human dignity.
Even places like Iran and Turkey responded.
Yes. Iran's President Pezeshkian sent condolences, noted his stance on Gaza. Turkey's Erdogan praised his interfaith dialogue work and, again, his position on the Palestinian issue.
And Egypt's Grand Imam of Al-Azhar.
He highlighted how Francis strengthened ties with the Islamic world, his fairness regarding Gaza, and efforts against Islamophobia. It shows really broad respect.
It really does. And there were symbolic gestures too, right? Not just words.
Oh, absolutely. Spain declared 3 days of national mourning.
I saw the Eiffel Tower went dark.
It did. And the bells at Notre Dame rang 88 times 1 for each year of his life.
Powerful. And Argentina.
7 days of mourning declared there. East Timor, also a week, flags lowered. These actions, they really underscore the global impact.
Okay, so that's the immediate world reaction. Let's shift focus now to the Vatican itself. What happens procedurally? You mentioned the Camerlengo, Cardinal Farrell.
Right. So with the Pope's death, the Vatican enters a period called the Sede Vacante. The see is vacant. And Cardinal Farrell, as Camerlengo, takes temporary charge.
Temporary charge of what, exactly?
Well, his immediate duties include formally verifying the Pope's death, which he did. Then he leads meetings to set the funeral date. And he oversees all the sort of practical organization leading up to the election of the next Pope, the Conclave. He basically manages the Vatican's day-to-day affairs in this interim period.
So he's the key figure right now.
He is. Reports also say he presided over the rite of placing Pope Francis's body into the coffin. That happened in the chapel of the Casa Santa Marta, where Francis lived.
A solemn duty. I heard a sort of funny story about his appointment.
Yeah, there was an interview back in 2016 where he mentioned getting the call from Pope Francis about becoming a cardinal. He apparently thought it was a prank at first.
Huh. Shows a human side to it all. Okay, let's talk about the funeral rites. The sources laid out 3 stages.
That's right. Stage 1 is the preparation. After medical confirmation, there's this ancient tradition where the Camerlengo formally identifies the Pope, calling him by his baptismal name, Jorge Mario Bergoglio.
And the fisherman's ring. That gets broken.
Yes, that's a really key symbolic act. The ring, unique to each pope, shows St. Peter fishing, representing the Pope as a fisher of men. Breaking it with a hammer signifies his reign is definitively over.
Prevents misuse, I guess.
Exactly. And it visually marks the end of that specific pontificate. After that, the Pope's private apartments are sealed.
Okay, stage 2, the viewing.
The Pope's body will be dressed in a simple white cassock and red vestments, then placed in a plain wooden coffin. This is apparently quite deliberate, reflecting his focus on being a humble pastor.
And where will the viewing be?
In St. Peter's Basilica for public veneration. There's also a tradition of placing a white cloth over his face.
Okay, and the final stage, the burial. This sounds like it's quite different from tradition.
It really is. Pope Francis specifically stated he wanted to be buried in the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, not in the Vatican grottos beneath St. Peter's, which is the norm.
Sure. Why there?
He had a very strong personal devotion to that basilica. Apparently, he visited it frequently, especially after his trips abroad, to pray before an icon of Mary there. It's a very personal choice.
Has any pope been buried there before?
Not since the 17th century, according to the CBS. So it's a significant break with recent tradition, reflecting his own wishes. And he wanted just a single wooden casket lined with zinc, not the traditional 3-nested coffins. Again, simplicity.
Simplicity seems key. Okay, so after the funeral, attention turns to the conclave. When does that start?
The rules state it can't begin for at least 15 days after the Pope's death. Gives cardinals time to travel to Rome.
And the process itself, it's famously secretive.
Extremely. All the cardinals under 80 years old are sealed inside the Sistine Chapel. No communication with the outside world.
Locked in, basically.
Pretty much. Then they vote. Multiple rounds. Secret ballots. They need a 2/3 majority to elect a new pope.
Why 2/3?
Historically, it's to ensure the chosen candidate has broad support among the electors. Not just a simple majority. Makes for a stronger consensus.
And that's where the smoke signals come in.
Exactly. After each round of voting, the ballots are burned. If there's no decision, chemicals are added to make black smoke. If a pope is elected, white smoke signals the news to the crowds waiting in St. Peter's Square.
Such an iconic image. Are there specific people who count the votes?
Yes, they're called scrutineers. They're chosen from among the cardinals to oversee the counting in each ballot round.
And already people are talking about potential successors. The papabili.
Oh yes, the speculation always starts immediately. Names being mentioned include Cardinal Parolin, the Secretary of State, Cardinal Erdo from Hungary, Cardinal Turkson from Ghana, Cardinal Toggle from the Philippines, Cardinal Zuppi from Italy, even Cardinal Burke, who's seen as more traditionalist.
So a range of possibilities.
A whole range. But, conclaves are notoriously unpredictable. There's an old saying in Rome, he who enters the conclave as pope leaves it as a cardinal.
Meaning the frontrunners don't always win.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Once someone's elected and accepts, he chooses a new papal name.
And then the big announcement.
Then the famous habemus papam, we have a pope, is declared from the central balcony of St. Peter's.
Mm.
Always a huge moment.
One other detail, something got postponed because of this?
Yes, the Vatican announced the canonization of Carlo Acutis, the young man known as God's influencer, which was scheduled for this Sunday, is now postponed. Understandable, given the circumstances.
Right. So let's just take a step back. Reflecting on these initial hours, what are the key themes emerging about Pope Francis's legacy?
Well, looking at the tributes, certain words keep coming up. Compassion, humility, service, especially to the poor and marginalized, peace building, interfaith dialogue.
His concern for the environment and social justice too, right?
Definitely. Those were major focuses for him.
Yeah.
And his background as the first Latin American pope clearly shaped his perspective. People also mention his efforts to make the Vatican a bit more transparent.
He certainly reached out across different faiths.
He did. Though it's also worth noting the complexities, like his welcoming tone towards LGBTQ individuals, but then the recent Vatican document, Dignitas Infinita, reaffirming traditional views on gender. It wasn't always straightforward.
And his connection to Gaza?
Yes, reports mention his consistent contact and support for the Christian community there, especially during the recent conflict. And apparently he was an inspiration behind the creation of the Olympic refugee team. Shows that humanitarian focus again.
So, summing up this initial phase, a massive global outpouring of grief and respect. Clear procedures now underway in the Vatican led by the Camerlengo. Funeral plans that seem to really reflect Francis's personal desire for simplicity. And the countdown to the conclave has begun.
Yeah, and those recurring themes in the tributes, compassion, humility, service, they really seem to capture the essence of how he was seen around the world, even in these first few hours.
It's quite something to witness the global reaction, isn't it? From political leaders, religious figures, ordinary people. It makes you think about the unique position the papacy holds today, way beyond just the Catholic Church itself.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, how will his specific choices, like wanting that simple burial in Santa Maria Maggiore, shape how he's remembered historically? It breaks the mold.
Absolutely. And it leaves us, and probably our listeners, with questions, doesn't it? What does this mean for the future direction of the church? Who will the cardinals choose next, and what priorities will he bring? It's certainly a moment for reflection on many, many levels.